not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Kyle, the day has come where we update our top 100 Minnesota Timberwolves of all time list. How are you on this fine holiday?
I'm doing well. Happy Tuesday. This list basically consumed my whole morning. I think we have to originally hat tip to a listener, Andrew, who on August 1st, 12:01, I think, sent us his updated list. He kind of got us started, I think, last year of doing this whole exercise. But when I was going through my list, and I think we should share it, we'll share it for the listeners and on YouTube, it was harder than I thought, because when we did this list last year, like Jimmy Butler, for example, I think he'll be a hot button topic because he was kind of known in these parts as the most successful kind of guy, right? Like he came in, kind of changed things. They didn't win a playoff series, but when people think about the Timberwolves in the past, they think Jimmy Butler and stuff. And now that this team has made the Western Conference Finals, I kind of just bumped up basically everyone on the roster. I mean, I think Jordan McLaughlin got a bump just for being part of it. So I think you'll see some guys move up. You'll see some guys move down. And I think the top of the list is probably also up for debate because we're getting closer and closer, Phil, to who is the greatest Timberwolf of all time. That answer should still probably be the same guy, but I think we're a ways off. You think we're close on that? I think we're closer than you would think, but I think the answer is still the same.
Because I think there's still, well, I don't want to spoil anything yet.
Let's get to let's go to the honorable
here's
mentions.
the question. Should we, I think what we should do is let's go through, we'll start at 100. And this is, I gave you my full 100 last year, and you kind of like picked nits with it or whatever. We're going to do it the opposite here, where you're going to give me and the audience your top 100. We'll start with 100, and then I can kind of poke at it. And I just pulled up my spreadsheet version. Dude, I forgot that I did this. I was sitting there late at night, probably like Wolves up 3-0 on the Suns, and I was highlighting and adjusting names. And so I forgot that I did update this back in like May. And so I can definitely argue with you on some of these, but yeah, the biggest questions are on the current roster, how high did this playoff run in this season spike some of the current players? And then I think we all agree number one stays the same, but is there a change with the number two, the second best player in franchise history? I will say for me, I do tend to weigh peak performance over longevity.
Okay. So
like if you're Jimmy Butler and you come in here and it was a shooting star and then it exploded and you went on to Philadelphia, but you were awesome for like a year, I value that more than, all due respect, like Doug West being a Timberwolf for 7 or 8 years or something. You know,
right.
So that was an unnecessary Doug West drive-by there. He is solidly in the top 100, but so like for me, if you had a really, really good year, like Sam Cassell, that year weighs a lot more. Jack Morris with the Twins, right? Like the dude pitched 10 innings in Game 7 of the World Series. He's one of the greatest Twins of all time. So that's kind of curious to see where you land with some of these. But let's go through it, and then we'll flash it on the screen once we get toward the top 10. Okay.
And one last thing. Let's focus a little less. This is hard. If you want to make your own, send it to Phil and I on Twitter, or, comment which was the most egregious mistake. Let's not focus on 75 to 100 as much because those are interchangeable. But as we get into the top 25, I think that's where kind of the debate kind of rages. But you want to just start with who was number 100 on my list?
Yes, but real quick, let me ask you this. Where do you draw the line in terms of like, okay, these are, because the punchline is, how can you find 100 relevant Timberwolves to even rank?
Right.
Totally with you on that. Where's sort of the line for you of, okay, this is how many actual meaningful players the Timberwolves have in their franchise history?
Corey Brewer, 45th.
Okay.
That was like that was not the Mendoza line, but that was the line where I started to really care. Because again, we're doing the top 100 Minnesota Timberwolves of all time, and I have Taurean Prince at 48th. So that says a lot about our favorite franchise. But yeah, Corey Brewer at 45th. Everything from there kind of mattered to me for a variety of different reasons. So the little spoiler alert, Corey Brewer came in at 45th. But back to 100, if I may. I don't know if Johnny Flynn was on the list last year. I think Johnny
Flynn, I'm looking on my list here. Let's see here. Scrolling down.
Listen,
Control F.
It didn't work. And that draft pick, I don't know if you knew this, Phil, but the Wolves actually
101. 101.
Oh, okay. Ew. I don't know if you knew this, but the Wolves passed on Steph Curry twice. But there are not 100 players who did more. I mean, Jalen Noel is on my list. I'm pretty sure Johnny Flynn had a better moment or two for this franchise than Jalen Noel. So probably should make that update. But yeah, I started this off with Johnny Flynn and then just straight to 90. Spud Webb, 99. Nemanja Bjelica, 98. Chase Budinger, 97. Mike James, Jordan McLaughlin, Scotty Brooks, Antoine Walker, Bobby Jackson, and at 91, Michael Olowokandi.
Okay. Yeah, just a really nice hodgepodge of random
Wolves of the week.
eighth guy, ninth guy coming off the bench. Yeah, I would say Michael Olowokandi. I can't remember one time where he passed out of the post. I watched that guy play. How long was he here? Like 2 years? Mm-hmm. And, Flip Saunders, ball movement, pass the ball around, and then Michael Olowokandi would get the ball with like 12 seconds left on the shot clock, and it was dribble, 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 weird hook shot, out the door to Bellinote before the game was over. That was pretty much.
The only thing I even know of him is all my memorabilia of when the Wolves made the Western Conference Finals during the KG era. Like, I think he was the starting center. So he's just kind of like the other guy in all my posters. But that's all you need to make the top 100 list.
Irvin Johnson, too, was in the mix for, I think it was Irvin Johnson and Michael Olowokandi, timeshare at center with Kevin Garnett, power forward.
So no issues there, I'm guessing. Right?
I'm trying, if you want me to really pick nits, I had Chase Budinger at 110 and Michael Olowokandi at 102, just behind Crunch at 101 on my list. Just so you know.
They're both about as productive.
Or 102, Crunch 102, I guess.
At 90, Donyell Marshall, and then James Johnson, black belt, Brandon Roy, Gerald Green, Alexei Shved at 86, Jalen Noel at 85. I do remember you and I tried to get him a $60 million contract extension. I'm glad we did not do that. Luka Garza going up the ranks a little bit.
Oh, top 100.
Okay. Eddie Griffin, Dean Garrett, and at 81, Luke Longley. Not Bulls Luke Longley, Timberwolves Luke Longley.
Let's talk about Luka Garza for a second here.
Okay.
Are you so impressed with his Cigars a Time minutes? Where he's literally like his per 36 is wild. I'm going to pull that up.
The 2024 top 100 list does factor in vibes, and he's been here long enough. He is very popular with the fan base. And again, some of the other names we're listing here, I don't have a strong memory of the Mike James era, but Luka Garza has done enough that, again, limited sample size, but if he ever did get enough run, he might find his way into like the 60s. But yeah, I thought Luka Garza deserved to be on this list ahead of some other guys, like you said, like Michael Olowokandi.
So here are Luka Garza's per 36 minutes numbers with the Timberwolves the last 2 years. 28 points per game per 36 minutes. 28 points, 9 rebounds, 2.5 assists, shooting 52% from the field, 77% free throws. But this dude averages 28 points per 36 minutes in Cigars a Time. Definitely warranted to put him on the top 100. And by the way, are you going to fight to the death between him and Chase Budinger, between him and Michael Olowokandi? I'd love to see Michael Olowokandi and Luka Garza in an actual fight. I would pay money to watch that.
And referee by Nikola Pekovic.
Yes.
So that brings us to 81. At 80, Felton Spencer, Wayne Ellington, Fred Hoiberg at 78. If we can talk about that. Josh Okogie, 77, Shabazz Muhammad, Monte Morris, Rasho Nesterovic, Mark Blunt, Craig Smith, and at 71, Mark Madsen. Now, before anyone that's listening to this freaks out, I just want to automatically say, put a lot of time into this, but as I always do, I don't review my work. I have no idea how Monte Morris was 75th. So I might have to edit that one.
No, dude, I'm not okay. So I had Monty Morris 94th. He did make my top 100.
Okay, that was my mistake.
We've got some. I'm just going through here. Some discrepancies. So back to your Scotty Brooks. I had Scotty Brooks 20 spots higher. Just a good hustle guard. I had him at 77.
Okay.
I have Fred Hoiberg. What do you have him? Like 70 something?
Oh, just my face is red. I have him 78th.
I have him 38th.
All right.
One of the greatest shooters in the history of Timberwolves basketball. Now, in fairness, like he took advantage of more Kevin Garnett double teams. Just he parked in the corner on the wing, and as soon as a double team would come, KG, one of the great passing big men. So a lot of wide open threes, but just a good cliche, high IQ, hustle shooting guard, an organizer of the offense. So I had him top 40. Well,
if you would have said which Iowa State Cyclone is further up on the list, I don't think you would have said Monty Morris. So again, I'm copying to that. That might have been user error. But yeah, Monty Morris at 75th. I think another one that's notable there, I was looking at last year's list. Mark Madsen at 71. I think last year he was 69. So he did fall a little bit. Not a great of a off
Andrew had him 69, I think. I had him just outside the 100. Screens and culture guy, though, for sure. Like towel waving, screens and culture. I'm not going to fight you on that one.
This is where, for the new list for 2024, it starts to kind of heat up. Saddest entry in the top 100 for me at 70, Derek Williams, followed by Dario Saric, Anthony Tolliver, Juancho Hernan Gomez, Wes Johnson at 66th, Darko Milicic, Gary Trent, LaFonso Ellis, Rashad McCants, and at 61, Martell Webster. What do you think?
Well, I would say that if nothing else, we both agree 100% on LaFonso Ellis being 63rd on our list. So we did nail LaFonso Ellis. Just one really good role player season. Yeah, I think now we're getting into some guys that actually contributed for
sure
some meaningful minutes, right?
Yep. Keep going at 60. This is one of my favorite kind of random Timberwolves. Ryan Gomes. Part of the Kevin Garnett trade. 59, Anthony Peeler. Then we have a double Malik sandwich. Malik Sealy at 58, Malik Beasley at 57, Mike Miller, Mo Williams, Chauncey Billups at 54, Randy Foye 53, Joe Smith, and at 51, Terry Porter.
Interesting. Okay, we're definitely sniffing around the same sort of. I'm looking at my rankings. Anthony Tolliver, you mentioned in the previous set of 10. Randy Foye, Joe Smith. Where was Joe Smith again?
Joe Smith came in at 52nd.
So I had him 27th.
Okay. Again,
yeah, just to fight you on this one for a minute. Just to fight you. He's viewed as one of the punchlines of Timberwolves basketball history because of the under the table deal. He's also a former number 1 overall pick, I believe. I think he was the number 1 overall pick by like Golden State or the Bullets or something.
A high pick. Yeah, keep going.
And so he's viewed as like never living up to the top pick status. He's viewed as never living up to the under the table contract and the 4 first-round picks that were taken away. But he was a really good complementary player on some teams that won 50-plus games. Could play some defense, knock down some mid-range shots. So I had him 27th. Was he a number 1 pick?
He was the first overall pick in the 95 draft by the Golden State Warriors. A couple other guys you might have known. Jerry Stackhouse at 3rd overall. Rasheed Wallace, Kevin Garnett, Damon Stoudemire, Gary Trent, and Brent Barry was also in that draft.
Gary Trent, by the way, coming in. Let's see, I had Peeler 33rd, so I'm a little higher on Peeler. And then Gary Trent
64th. I am 35. The Timberwolves are 35, but that does not mean I remember everything from when I was 12. So little age thing there. But this is where it starts to heat up with some more modern day players that you might be familiar with. At 50, top 50, Trenton Hassel, Troy Hudson, Taurean Prince, JJ Barea, Jared Vanderbilt coming in at 46th, Corey Brewer 45th, Luke Ridnour 44th, Jamal Crawford, Taj Gibson, and at 41, the 41st best player in Timberwolves history, Gorgie Jang.
Interesting. Okay, JJ Barea, very polarizing player. He always drove me nuts because he stepped on the floor, and to his credit, he had the confidence of a prime Kobe Bryant. But he had the size and athletic ability of a rec league player, and that's why he would get stuffed on the underside of the backboard every other shot, I feel like. So I was always kind of down on JJ Barea, but he was a spark plug on some competitive teams for sure. I'm trying to find where I had him. I had him 65th, I guess, on my list.
He played here more than I thought. I think he played, if I have my math right, like almost like 160 games.
Okay.
I thought he was just another one of those Timberwolves kind of flyover country, come in for a year. I'm trying to look something out. Do you remember if he won a title with Dallas before he came here and then he went back to Dallas? Okay.
He helped bury the Lakers in the first round. He was just a massive gnat that nobody could swat throughout the entire playoffs.
And I think, when we think back to the Timberwolves and all the history and issues they've had, he came in and there was like no culture or leadership. So despite his short stature, he kind of just tried to be like one of the alphas for this team. But I thought he had, if you go back and actually look, like he had surprisingly pretty good numbers. So I did have him at 47th. Again, some recognizable names. I mean, Luke Ridnour, I always joke about, was starting at shooting guard for this team. They have upgraded slightly to Anthony Edwards. But to me, Gorgui Dieng at 41, as I look at it now, he probably deserves to be, I mean, you talk about longevity, maybe not the peak that you want, but all
you're being disrespectful to him, man. I have him 26th.
Okay.
That's a good defensive, rebounding, big man, good leader, consistent.
In fantasy draft, since we're all doing fantasy drafts for football right now, I'm going to go on a heavy run of guards here soon. So Taj Gibson at 42, also worth noting because his kind of most historic moment in Timberwolves franchise history is that strip seal in Game 82. So probably deserves to be elevated. But we do start to get some tough names here that, are they top 20? Where do they go? At 40, Jeff Teague, famous podcaster. 39, Patrick Beverley. 38, Derrick Rose. 37, Thaddeus Young. 36, Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Okay, here we go.
Last year, Nickeil came in. Again, we did this right after the season ended. The Mike Conley-Nickeil trade had been here for just a hot minute. But Nickeil last year on our list was 82nd. And this year I have him 36th. He is the highest mover in our board this year compared to last year.
So I had him on my list 107 last year, up to 30th.
Okay, there we go.
So also the highest mover, 100%. Yeah, just the way that he has become one of the key rotation players of a Western Conference Finals team. You don't get to the Western Conference Finals without his defense, his three-point shooting, and just kind of being a Swiss Army knife guard. So, yeah, maybe we're overreacting a little to just one season, putting him above some of these other guys that you have. But, yeah, right now I think the version that we saw last year is all we can kind of go off of. And in that small sample size, he's definitely one of the 30 or 40 most impactful Timberwolves.
Overreacting to one season is kind of the mantra for how this list was made. At 35, I had Michael Beasley. 34, Robert Covington. 33, Kevin Martin. 32, Ricky Davis. And at 31, Tyus Jones. Any issues with those?
No, we're all kind of in the general area. Although, go through the last five names again.
35, Michael Beasley. 34, Robert Covington, Kevin Martin, Ricky Davis, and then Tyus Jones.
Okay, I have Malik and Michael Beasley 68th and 69th. Just empty calories, offensive players that are kind of clueless mentally, that probably belong playing overseas, scoring 30 points a game, smoking weed, whatever. But we're mostly tracking here. I feel like, where did you put Billups? Because I have Chauncey Billups 32nd on my list. I feel like it's been maybe 30 slots since we talked about Chauncey Billups.
I had Chauncey Billups at 54th.
Okay.
I'm probably wrong there.
I think I probably have him way too high. I also feel like his career he was here for like a minute or two, but he was better here than we remember. We think of like, oh, he came out of nowhere for the Pistons, but he was actually a good role player on this team and some others.
That's funny you say that because that's true. I think Jim Pete told me that once. But also when you just think of Chauncey Billups, he wasn't as good here as you think of Chauncey. You know what I mean? Like he was better here than you think, but he wasn't as good here as he was basically everywhere else. Where did you have going back quick to the Beasley brothers? Where did you have them again?
68 and 69 for Malik and Michael.
And
I know that like Malik scored 20 points a game during a chunk of a season for the Wolves, but like, have you ranked Malik Beasley yet? Or are we still getting to him?
He was down there. Down there. But yeah, the Beasley brothers, one of those guys had a really cool estate sale, right? And then one of those guys didn't let you on his estate. So
Malik, if there's a parade of homes coming through Milwaukee or wherever he's going to be playing, just make sure you give him a heads up that there's going to be cars going by his neighborhood.
If there is a parade of homes near where the Shanghai Sharks play, be careful. So that was 31 was Tyus Jones. This one that I'm about to say at 30 was my toughest. Last year he was 34th. I bumped him up a little bit, but I don't know where to put him exactly. At 30th overall, Zach LaVine. Andre Kirilenko at 29. I've always said he's one of my favorite players. Just Swiss Army knife. 28. I showed some love to Tyrone Corbin.
Yes.
27, Pooh Richardson. And then at 26th overall, Christian Laettner. Any issue with those guys?
Okay, yeah, let's pause. So we both have Tyrone Corbin 28th on the nose.
Look at us.
Just a really kind of forgotten, good, solid player from the early days of the Timberwolves. Yeah, he averaged 18 points a game in his second season with the Wolves. Just, not a great team.
What are his initials? Shout out to Ross.
Yeah, I wish Ross was here today. Yeah, Ross is. We kind of changed our recording schedule, so we'll do a random Wolf next week. We'll get back on track. But yeah, I had Zach LaVine 42nd, and then I had AK-47 at 47. Fittingly, he was kind of in that ballpark, so I figured I'd put him at 47. Kirilenko was a good Swiss Army knife player.
So I wanted to stop this and then do a big reveal for the top 25. But where did you have Christian Laettner?
I have him 18th. So we're not that far off.
Okay. I did feel a little tough about that one. But I do, as we get into this, there's maybe one guard in the top 25 that we can debate. But I feel pretty good as I'm getting higher up this pecking order. So without further ado,
hold on. Before you get to 25.
Okay.
I do just want to shout out. We are giving away because we're going to do this at the end of the month. So I want to get this shout out in on today's episode. A 75-inch Roku Pro Series 4K TV that automatically adjusts color and sharpness for shows, movies, just in time for football season and for basketball season in a couple of months. Nearly an $1,800 value. You can register to win that thing right now in the SKOR North app under the listener rewards section. It's a 75-inch Roku Pro Series 4K TV, Kyle. A very exciting potential final piece to your podcasting office, maybe. Right behind you there.
Anything would help right now. I look like I'm in prison. The top 25. Last year, Rudy Gobert was 25th. Just want to put that out there right now. On this list at top 25, the updated version, J.R. Rider, Nikola Pekovic at 24, Kyle Anderson 23, D'Angelo Russell 22, and Doug West at 21.
Yeah.
Instantaneously,
Doug West is tough.
I should switch D'Lo and Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson had a much better year a season ago. That's why he skyrocketed. He was 21st on our list last year. A little bit of a down year this year. Should he be behind D'Lo? Probably not. When I think of D'Lo, I think of him with one finger up in the air when they won the lottery to get Ant. So I'm just giving him that, even though he played no role in the ping pong balls. Yeah. But yeah, 25, J.R. Rider, Pekovic, Kyle Anderson, D'Angelo Russell, and Doug West. Any questions?
Kyle Anderson, 25 for me. D'Lo, 23. We're all kind of in the same neighborhood there. Doug West, it's hard to know what to do with him because he's a long-tenured player who was a good solid player for mostly some bad teams. So I had him 31st, but we're all kind of in the same neighborhood here. Let's keep. Now we're in the top 20. Let's keep grinding our way. Give us up to the top 10 here. Give us like 20 through 11.
At 20, Tony Campbell, Stephon Marbury, 19, 18, Terrell Brandon, 17, Ricky Rubio, 16, Andrew Wiggins, 15, Sam Mitchell, 14, Al Jefferson, 13, Jaden McDaniels, 12, Latrell Sprewell, and at 11, Tom Gugliotta.
Holy cow. Where'd you have Marbury?
I had Stephon Marbury at 19.
I thought I was being disrespectful putting him at 11.
Do I have to eat Vaseline? What's up?
If you were to ask most Timberwolves fans that have like watched since the 90s, generally without putting, hours of research into it like we inexplicably have, where does Stephon Marbury rank in Wolves history? People would say, like top 5 or top 10 because of just the impact early with Kevin Garnett. But my hot take has always been he wasn't even the best point guard of that general era of Timberwolves basketball. I think Terrell Brandon was a better player than Stephon Marbury. Wasn't as flashy. So I'll take you through here. I've got 21 Ricky Rubio, 20 Tony Campbell. So we match exactly on some of these. 19 Pooh Richardson, 18 Christian Laettner, 17 Sam Mitchell, 16 Andrew Wiggins, 15 Naz Reid, up from 37 the last time. 14 Jaden McDaniels, so we're just, I think, one spot off there. And then 13 Mike Conley, 12 Al Jefferson, 11 Stephon Marbury. And then we get to the 10.
I'm going to tweet this list out because I'm sure it'll.
I'm going to put it up on the screen now too, by the way.
Discussion. But for me, the interesting one of this top 20, again, I remember Tony Campbell had a good career. I don't remember exactly what was going on, but it was that trio of 17, 18, 19, Ricky Rubio, Terrell Brandon, Stephon Marbury. Last year, I think it was Terrell Brandon, Stephon Marbury, Ricky Rubio. So basically the big winner there is Rubio has leapfrogged the two of them. But I'm willing to be wrong. Like, if you just said gun to your head, who had a more notable Timberwolves career, Stephon Marbury or Ricky Rubio, who would you say?
Stephon Marbury.
Okay.
But your points are taken. I think the reason I say that, maybe I'm biased because like I sort of fell in love with that era of Wolves basketball.
Yeah.
Is Marbury was the main sidekick to Kevin Garnett when they first made the playoffs as a franchise. So just like Marbury helped push that team to a level that it hadn't been. And not that it was Rubio's fault necessarily, but Rubio will be remembered as a key piece to a team that never quite could. Kevin Love was like diet Kevin Garnett, and Ricky Rubio couldn't hit the side of the backboard, with a 3-point shot. So, and I love Rubio, and defensively and passing and rebounding, steals and all those things. Great player, leadership. But I do think Stephon Marbury's meaningfulness to the franchise puts him higher on the list than Rubio for me.
Okay.
Now, who would I rather watch play a game, and who do I like more? Rubio.
That's fair.
But they're both very similarly placed on these lists for sure.
So again, if you're on YouTube, the list is now up. But if you're listening in your car or at the gym, this is the top 10. This is where the most movement has occurred. This is where the most debate is open to. At 10th, the 10th best Timberwolf of all time, I had Mike Conley. At 9, Jimmy Butler. 8, Naz Reid. 7, Sam Cassell. And 6th, Wally Szczerbiak. Let's just talk about those 5 really quick.
Wow, dude. Okay. I feel like you went a little aggressive with Naz Reid. I think putting Naz Reid again, he's been here for more years than Jimmy Butler. The debate I want to have is Naz Reid or Tom Gugliotta. So I have Naz Reid 15th and Tom Gugliotta 9th because I feel like Tom Gugliotta is one of the most under-talked about key figures in franchise history. They traded former number 4 overall pick Donyell Marshall, who was like 90th on your list. They traded the 90th best Timberwolf for a top 15-ish all-time Timberwolf, or in my case, 9th best. He was an all-star. He was the Timberwolves' first all-star in 96-97. Just a professional 20 points per game, big body, rebounding player that was, I think, the best player on their first playoff team. We talk about KG and Steph. Gugliotta was probably the best player on their first playoff team. So dude, like you go back and watch that, and even the numbers, like his last 2 years with the Timberwolves, 21 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, pretty efficient offensively. He could shoot free throws, play some defense. So I'm a Tom Gugliotta stan, in case you can't tell.
I'm open to that. Maybe he could slide into the top 10. You said Naz Reid versus Tom Gugliotta. I want to have a quick debate. I'm just in such a good mood coming off 10 days in Minnesota and getting around the state. So I'm open to debate, but I'm also still petty as ever. Naz Reid versus Jimmy Butler. Because when we did this last year, and Jimmy Butler is by far the hottest button topic for, I think, the franchise in general, but this list. Yeah. Last year when we did this, we were basically still referencing this 1 year where they were kind of good, and they were, if Jimmy doesn't go down, they might be a top 2 team in the West, and they flame out in the playoffs, and then it just all blew up, right? Now that we have a bigger sample size of people who won awards, Naz Reid was 6th man of the year, Rudy Gobert won his 4th defensive player of the year here, a team that's made the Western Conference Finals. I would argue that I could have moved Jimmy completely out of the top 10 because I'm asking you, who has more of a historian than I am and just usually smarter, what now after 2024 season, like why is Jimmy Butler a top 10 Timberwolves player of all time?
Well, couple things on this. And I think your point about the 2023-4 team changing this discussion is also well taken. But when Jimmy Butler arrived, this franchise had gone almost a decade and a half without making the playoffs. He comes in, instantly turns this team from a perennial joke, laughingstock, 50-loss team, immediately makes them a near 50-win team, was one of the best players in the league when he was healthy. He only played like 55 or 60 games, but defense, scoring, playmaking, everything. So I know that like the flameout was epic. The way he handled it was terrible. But his impact, taking a franchise that hadn't been to the playoffs in a decade and a half and dragging them there with young Andrew Wiggins, young Karl Anthony Towns scared of his own shadow in that series against Houston in the playoffs and getting made fun of on TNT. I still think there's a place. Now, on your list, you've got Gugliotta out of the top 10. I've got Googs in the top 10 and Jimmy Butler in the top 10. So I guess the ones I'm bumping here, you've got Conley as a top 10 all-time Wolf. I have him 13th. So I guess I'm bumping Conley and Naz Reid. But yeah, because Conley and Naz Reid are complementary pieces on a playoff team. Butler is a catalyst, the lead playmaker on a playoff team. And I value that 1 year peak performance over sort of multiple years as a key role player. That's my logic. But I'm not like dying on the hill. I'm not dying on the hill.
I think bigger picture, it's as we get older, and we're all doing it, are we remembering the Jimmy Butler thing to be more than what it was? Because like if we go just Jimmy Butler versus Naz Reid, you have one highly drafted lottery pick guy versus an undrafted guy, a guy who essentially flamed out of here for many reasons, but because he wanted more money, versus a guy like Naz Reid who stayed and probably took less money.
Yeah.
More accolades, right? He won 6th man of the year. He was a big part of when Karl went down 2 years ago. I just think I probably could have had a beverage and moved Naz even higher, but I wanted to respect my top 6. So Naz Reid last year, like I said, I think he was outside my top 25. I can't find him. Oh, Naz Reid last year was 40th on the list that we put together with Andrew. This year on my list, he's 8th. So
I think like one more thought on this, and I'm not, okay. If this was an arbitration hearing, I'm not trying to disparage Naz Reid.
Easy now.
Right.
We have enough of those coming up.
But yeah, but you called for a debate between Naz Reid and Jimmy Butler. And Naz Reid, Timberwolves career averages 11 points per game, 13 points per game as 6th man of the year, and other qualities like knocking down threes and stuff. Jimmy Butler averages almost twice that in his smaller sample size. Like he's a 22 points per game scorer. So like just from an impact on a game, Naz Reid is still a limited minutes guy that we think could play more minutes. Jimmy Butler is a bell-to-bell guy as a Timberwolf, even though he couldn't necessarily stay on the floor for more than like 55 or 60 games. So
do you know quickly,
kind of where I'm at.
Before we do the top 5, do you know how many games Naz Reid has played for the Timberwolves?
I am staring at his basketball reference page.
Okay.
So
don't answer that, because the answer was
a lot more than
326. No, but this is kind of my point on the Jimmy thing. Take all the pettiness aside. Do you know how many games Jimmy Butler played for the Timberwolves?
Like 70?
69.
Yeah.
And that's like my whole thing. Is like he didn't even play a full season of games. And they, lost in 5 to the Rockets. But at the time, I was like, oh, Jimmy changed everything. Like, you could probably have another debate, although your point is that he drugged them from never making the playoffs back in.
Yeah.
Like, Patrick Beverley's impact versus Jimmy Butler's impact in terms of changing the culture and actually uplifting this thing, not for a short-term period, but like, I think Bev has some of the culture still ingrained in this franchise now, but it is a fun debate, nevertheless.
But Pat Bev latches on to teams that are probably going to get pretty close to the playoffs. That sometimes Pat Bev frames it as, if it wasn't for me, this would be a 12-win team, and now it's a 50-win team, when he also just does a good job of sometimes selecting the team that he gets to, give his leadership traits to.
In Pat's defense, when he arrived in Minnesota, I remember being a media day, and he said, we're going to make the playoffs. He was laughed at. Like that team wasn't really in the playoff picture. Nevertheless, again, from 10 to 6, I had Mike Conley, Jimmy Butler, Naz Reid, Sam Cassell, and then Wally Szczerbiak. The top 5 to me, to be completely honest, is unarguable. And it starts with, at number 5, future Hall of Famer, I don't care what Basketball Reference says, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. At 4, Kevin Love. At 3, Karl-Anthony Towns. At 2, Anthony Edwards. And at 1, Kevin Garnett.
Okay, here's my 10. I'll give you the top 10. Where'd you have Terrell Brandon, by the way? 18th. Okay. So here's my top 10. Wally, 10. Googs, 9. 8, Terrell Brandon. Again, I think he's one of the 3 most underrated players in Wolves history. 7, Jimmy Butler. 6, Kevin Love. So I already disagree with you. Because I value peak performance over longevity. And Sam Cassell's impact on the 2003-2004 Timberwolves puts him 5 for me. He was such an assassin, man. Playmaking, shooting. If he doesn't hurt his hip doing the big balls dance, which maybe that knocks him down a few spots on this list, I think they win the championship in 2003-04. He would have been the second best player on a championship team. He was the second best player on a team that led the Western Conference in wins. And I know Kevin Love's numbers were gaudy, but I feel like Kevin Love, really, really good player. Like, we're picking nits here. I think he's the 6th best player. You think he's 4. But, Kevin Love was putting up a lot of hollow statistics on mediocre to bad teams and kind of settled in as like the 3rd guy on those Cavs teams. But I'm not going to fight to the death if somebody wants to put him in the top 5. But I have Rudy number 4.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Cat 3, Anthony Edwards 2, Kevin Garnett 1.
So, again, I want to go back to the 03-04 team. I was 15. There's probably some things I'm not remembering. In the Sam Cassell one, you might, even though I have him as 7th, which is pretty good, you're right to make a case that he maybe should be even higher. But the one I really want to point out as my 5th is Rudy Gobert. Because, again, we just did a big Jimmy Butler versus Naz Reid, Jimmy Butler versus Tom Gugliotta. Like, Jimmy Butler and Rudy Gobert, to me, have a common thread in that they were both like these kind of big stars that were traded for. And one of those guys has actually helped turn this thing around and build something sustainable. And the other guy was Jimmy Butler. So to me, it's like not even up for debate. I'm sure if this got onto basketball Twitter, yes, Jimmy Butler's cooler, he's funnier, all that stuff. It's not even close of who has made more of an impact on this franchise. So I felt good with him at 5.
Yeah.
Then it came down to, for me, Kevin Love versus Karl-Anthony Towns. I just don't think, one of those guys, I know both had their flaws and have their flaws, but I think Karl-Anthony Towns just flat out deserves to be higher than Kevin Love. And then at the top, again, I had no intention of ever putting Ant at number 1, but I was looking at our notes that we swapped last year at this time, and we kind of said it'll always be Garnett. Again, think about the Timberwolves coming off a 5-game loss to the Nuggets, embarrassing fashion, tough offseason, all that stuff. now, a year later, thinking of what they've done, I'm just saying that Kevin Garnett will always hold that spot at least this year, but it's closer than you think, right? Like, well, what in terms of longevity, Garnett has it, but what else does he have that Ant hasn't done right now? Serious question, not leading.
Yeah, I think longevity does matter because KG's longevity is greatness the entire time.
Yep.
So if it's different than like Doug West or Sam Mitchell longevity, or like Kevin Love being a pretty good player for 5 or 6 years. KG was a Hall of Famer for this organization for like 12 years.
Yep.
So short of being a Hall of Famer for 12 years, what boxes can he check to surpass KG? Well, he could be the best player on a championship team or the best player on a team that gets to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. I think, KG has an MVP. So could Ant win an MVP or two? Let's say next season, just for fun, Anthony Edwards coming off Olympics experience, another summer on his grind. Let's say he is the NBA MVP. Timberwolves win the NBA Finals, and he becomes NBA Finals MVP. Doesn't have the longevity or the Hall of Fame resume of KG, but if he flashes like that, MVP, Wolves win the championship, and he is crowned best player on championship team, does he surpass Kevin Garnett as the best player in franchise history?
Oh, you set such a fun high bar. 41 minutes into this is where someone is going to want to fight me. I don't even need that. And I mean with my
if he
heart.
gets to the finals, you're fine.
Dude, if the Timberwolves go to back-to-back Western Conference Finals led by Anthony Edwards, I get the longevity thing. Ant goes to number one.
But then you're saying
I don't need the title. I mean, I want the title.
KG is like, okay, I'm going to state what I think is a fact because I feel like we should agree or disagree on like what we're arguing here. Do you think? I think KG is one of the 25-ish best players in NBA history.
Okay. Yes. I agree with that.
Is that 25-ish? Yep. You could sit here and. So what you would be saying is, if Anthony Edwards takes a little bit of a step forward, and the Wolves go back to the Western Conference Finals, that maybe he's MVP, that he would be considered one of the 25-ish best players in NBA history. Because that's the bar for me. Is like you have to be like 25-ish best player. Which, by the way, he's nowhere near that conversation right now, just objectively. Outside of like you and me on this podcast, with you being on an island.
if you're watching on YouTube, I've been drinking caffeine this whole time. You painted that well, but you did it biased. Because I agree, Kevin Garnett's probably a top 25 player of all time. But I would also argue, and this is sad and makes me feel bad, that his most notable probably memories are not in Minnesota. So he wins a title with the Celtics. If he never wins a title and just finishes his whole career with Minnesota and let's say maybe does make a Western Conference Finals run again, do you think he'd be a top 25 player of all time? Because the answer would be no.
So if you just took KG's Timberwolves career without the hardware of a championship with the Celtics,
not even close to it.
He's a top 40. Well, but his peak years were with the Timberwolves.
Right.
And then maybe like a couple peak years on the back end in a championship with Boston. But obviously winning a championship puts you higher up on those lists like nationally. I'm saying, I think you think it's closer than I do. I need some years. I need Anthony Edwards to put his head down and put in some years here. Unless they were to like win a championship right away, and he's 23 years old holding the championship, holding the LOB in his right arm. Like, okay, that changes the conversation.
If you Google anything and you look at top 25 basketball players of all time, I'd be shocked if you found one player in the top 25 that didn't have a title.
Yeah.
So back to my point is if Garnett never wins a title.
Barkley's
probably Barkley, yeah. So again, I just want to clear this up because now I'm getting a little heated. Kevin Garnett is still on August 27, 2024, the best player in franchise history. But it should be mentioned that his most notable accolade did come not here, and that sucks. And they failed to put. I literally was watching the what's the his first name, Thompson, the interview where Kevin Garnett's crying on the court. That's one of the greatest pieces of basketball content in the world, where Kevin Garnett is just literally, you don't see interviews like that anymore. Just literally being like, I want to make it work here, and everyone around me is incompetent, including the owner and everyone trying to build the roster. So it sucks that it didn't work here. But if Anthony Edwards, 12 months from now when we do this, has led the Wolves to back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances, I think you can say, Phil, Kevin Garnett is still a better player in the history of the league, but that Anthony Edwards is the best player in the history of the Timberwolves.
And I still need more. Because dude, context also matters with the rosters. And man, like this supporting cast that Anthony Edwards has is so stacked. I mean, you've got, I know that I can be dismissive of Karl Anthony Towns sometimes, but he is an excellent offensive player. You've got the defensive player of the year. KG was doing what Rudy Gobert does defensively by being the big man that chases away and blocks shots. Like KG had to do what Rudy's doing defensively and what Ant is doing offensively every single night, which is we need 23, 24 points a game and the playmaking. Oh, and on defense, we needed to clean the glass and be the rim protector pretty much every single night for like a decade. And his second best player on a lot of those teams was Wally Szczerbiak. So, and like Anthony Peeler was his main offensive sidekick for one of those playoff runs. So we differ on this a little bit. I think it'll be a fun argument to see play out over the next like 3 to 5 years for sure, though.
Okay, but I do want to give you the floor quickly before we wrap this one up, because now that we've kind of talked it out and worked through our emotions, you're high if you think it's even if I told you 12 months from now we're doing another one of these in August and I said the Timberwolves are the defending champions, you're going to actually be like, should Anthony Edwards be number one? Because if they win a title, I mean, he's number one, he's number two, he's number three, Jaden's number four.
A title changes it.
Okay.
A title changes it. But a trip to the Western Conference Finals, even though he would have 2 of them to KG's 1,
okay,
that's not quite enough for me. Now, okay, if it's MVP, scoring title, Western Conference Finals, like first team All-NBA, the needle has been moved a lot in that case, and this would be an amazing set of circumstances. These would be great problems for us to have on next year's Top 100 Wolves episode.
If the Wolves win a title in the 24-25 season, I'm just letting you know right now, we'll do this again. Terrence Shannon Jr. is higher than Tom Gugliotta. All 15 players from the team are in the top 15. Luka Garza's 9th. But no,
what about Joe Ingles? Joe Ingles?
Top 7. He'll be the third best coach in franchise history behind Finch and Flip. I want to say one thing quick too, because we've used this pod for other things. We're wrapping up again. Make fun of us in the comments. Send me your list on Twitter. I'm actually really do love these lists. It's fun to do. If you think Cherokee Parks should be higher, let me know. But shout out to, I think, kind of a local legend in your parts, right? Casey O'Brien.
Yeah.
I think you tweeted this out the other day. Casey's going through a pretty big cancer battle over the last 11 years. Did he play football at the University of Minnesota?
He was on the Gopher roster. Yep. He backup quarterback, holder. I mean, he was grinding through, even as a Gopher, just grinding through cancer treatments off and on. But yeah.
He's got a GoFundMe link that I said Phil tweeted out yesterday. Go check it out. Trying to raise a $250,000 goal. I know people can sometimes be, questioning all these GoFundMes, but if you read Casey's GoFundMe and the battle he's had and what my history with cancer in my family, but also cancer research, I think he's got some innovative new things that he's trying to do to battle this. But with the American health insurance and stuff, it doesn't always cover it. So if you have $1 or $5 or anything, or even just kind of thoughts or positive energy, send them to Casey O'Brien's way, because way too young to be battling cancer and just way too young to be battling cancer that long. So that stuff means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to you. And if we can use this platform to try to, send some love or send some, actual ways to help this young kid get the treatment he needs so he can be a guest on the show one day. So shout out to Casey and shout out to anyone else out there who's got, as I always say, family dealing with it or friends dealing with it. You are not alone. It's a very scary thing, but there are a lot of resources out there too. So hit me up if you ever need directions where to go for patient advocacy or new studies or anything like that. So shout out to Casey.
Yeah, Casey's Twitter account is CaseyOB14, and I know he has the link posted. Like you said, I retweeted it last night. You can find it on mine at Phil Mackey. And the part of this that hit me probably closest selfishly He said, unfortunately, I've had a recent relapse and insurance will not cover my next treatment plan. Please help if possible. This happened with my mom back in 2017, where she was several months into, she had a rare blood cancer. There were there's like 20 different kinds of blood cancer or whatever. And she drew like the shortest possible stick. And so they were kind of down to experimental treatments once they got past some of the basics. And insurance doesn't, if there's not enough, like, say, if,
like,
I mean,
data and stuff,
to put it bluntly, like, if there's really no hope with the treatment, then insurance doesn't come in and pick up that tab. And so there just wasn't enough like data information. And so we had to like make hard financial decisions as a family of, okay, what are the odds that this works out versus ravages someone's body? Is it worth it? Like, and to have finances play a role in that conversation is really tough, but it sounds like that's where the O'Brien family is right now. So yeah, they could use some help at that GoFundMe link from anybody. It's $5 or $500. You can check it out.
And in those situations, like you said, what he's going through, what that family's going through, the last thing you should have to think about is how I'm going to pay the bills. But I can attest to this in both how I work for my job, but also my family. Everything does matter in those little things. And if all you have is $5, that can mean a lot. If you pull a bunch of people in, and even just thinking about them, or if you have someone in your family or your friends that is going through any sort of cancer or anything, now is a good time as we kind of transition from summer to fall to reach out to them. You never know when it could be the last time talking to someone. So call your friends, call your family, hug your loved ones. And yeah, I think that's a good way to close this one out.
Amen. And if you guys want to debate us, if you're ragingly angry about anything we just said in this episode, the YouTube comment section on this episode of Flagrant Howls. He's Kyle Theige. I'm Phil Mackey. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.